Once leaving Morgan State, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
And how long were you in the Marine Corps, sir?
10 years.
During that 10 years, Mr. Ojimba, were you activated and served in active combat duty?
Yes.
Where were you deployed, sir?
2006, I was deployed to Iraq, Fallujah, Iraq. In 2011, I was deployed to Afghanistan.
So how many tours of duty total did you perform for the United States Marine Corps?
Outside the United States, 2.
Sir, at some point in between tours of duty, and I'm calling your attention particularly to your tour of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, did you have a time where you were actually home for a while in the Boston area?
Yes.
And did you have some employment at any area nightclubs in the city of Boston?
Yes. I was about 7 or 8 years. I worked at Rumor Venue District in Cure. Yeah.
And what is your current occupation, sir?
I currently work with a charter school and the athletic director.
The athletic director for a charter school?
Yes, sir.
How long have you had that position, sir?
3 years.
Now, calling your attention to the 7+ years that you worked for Cure, Venue, and I think you said Rumor, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there a period of time that you worked and then left to go back for a tour of duty in Afghanistan?
Yes. While at Rumor and Venue, I got activated and deployed to Afghanistan in 2011.
And when did you return from that active deployment, sir?
Got back from Afghanistan about December 2011, January 2012 there. Then I stayed in California until about June 2012.
In June 2012, Mr. Ojimba, did you come back to the Boston area and ultimately come back to working for Cure nightclub?
Yes, I did.
In addition to Cure, were you also performing some work for Rumor and Venue?
Yes, I was.
What was your primary role in that summer of 2012? In other words, what was your job for Cure?
I was nightclub security for all those clubs.
Were you nightclub security during that whole 7-year period, although I know there's some gaps in between? Were you always nightclub security?
Yes, sir. The roles would change for the security, but yes, I was.
Calling your attention now, Mr. Ojimba, to July 15th, 2012. It's a Sunday night leading into a Monday morning, July 16th, 2012. Were you called into work that night?
Yes, I was.
What were the circumstances of being called into work that night?
Well, the primary nightclubs I worked were Venue and Rumor nightclub. It being summer or with someone calling out for being sick, I would be called in to Cure to cover anytime someone didn't show up.
And this particular night, were you called in to cover for an individual who was absent?
Absolutely, yes.
And do you know about what time you started working that night?
Probably showed about 10:45.
What time was the club open to back then, Club Cure?
The club would usually open about 10 o'clock and stay open till about 2.
And when you arrived, Mr. Ojimba, did you go into a particular area to perform your security duties?
When I would arrive, I would obviously go to the security office, clock in, grab my radio, then I'll make my way to the floor and start patrolling for the most part.
Mr. Ojimba, I'm going to call your attention to a particular time period, that being about 12:30 in the morning that night that you were working at Club Cure. Do you recall that time period?
For the most part, I believe so. Yes, I do, yeah.
And prior to what we're about to talk about, did you know who the professional football player was, Aaron Hernandez, at the time?
I knew of him, yes, I did.
And how did you know of him, again, prior to this Sunday night into Monday morning?
He was obviously he was a professional football player for the New England Patriots at that time, so he was known throughout, in this area. At the nightclub, he was what I would call a regular patron. He was a regular face that would be at one of the nightclubs in the city that I worked at from time to time.
What were those nightclubs, again?
Rumor, Venue, Cure.
And you had seen Mr. Hernandez at all 3 of those, is that correct?
Yes.
And then just to ensure that we're talking about the same individual, do you see the person you knew or know as Aaron Hernandez seated in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Would you please point him out and describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Blue tie, white shirt, looks like about a blue suit.
If the record may reflect, the witness identified the defendant, Aaron Hernandez.
It may.
And calling your attention now again to about sometime after 12:30 in the morning, did you see Aaron Hernandez at some point in the club?
Yes, I did.
Where were you when you first saw him?
I was on one end of the bar closest to the security office.
And sir, I'm going to call your attention to what's been marked for identification as the letter J. It's immediately to your left, and there should be a pointer near you. May I approach with, sir?
You may.
Just handing you a pointer.
Yep.
You said that you were stationed at this point near the office area. Can you show on the diagram marked as the letter J approximately where you were standing?
Yeah. So, secure myself here. So I was primarily in this area here of the bar on this end.
And this area leads towards the inner office area.
Yeah,
is that
security
correct?
office would be back here, particularly one of these open spaces here.
So you're standing right about here in this area, sir?
Yes, sir.
And when you first saw Mr. Hernandez, where was he?
Mr. Hernandez was in this area.
In that area right there?
Yep, on the other side of the bar. Correct.
Mr. Ojimba, describe, if you would, what you observed of Mr. Hernandez and anybody around him when you looked across.
So obviously, I'm entering the dance floor from this side. Whenever I enter a room, I'm creating a baseline. I immediately stop to try to create a baseline.
What do you mean by create a baseline?
You're trying to get a rhythm of that room. You're trying to get, you in a nightclub, you really don't always see what happens. If you create a proper baseline, you would probably, the baseline would change. Something that's not usually happening or you didn't see happening before would happen. You follow?
So is that another way of you're looking for something that stands out?
Yes, you're looking for something out the norm.
And as you were doing that baseline scan, what did you observe?
So I'm doing my scan from left to right. So I'm here, I'm just scanning. I get over here to this area here.
Now, when you say get over, you mean your site?
I've scanned over to this area here, and I see Mr. Hernandez speaking to two other individuals that I wasn't familiar with at that time. Mr. Hernandez is with another individual.
And where was that other individual in relation to Mr. Hernandez, the one that he was with?
He's slightly over his shoulder.
Which shoulder, right or left?
That would be his left shoulder, yeah.
And the other individual's over his left shoulder. What did you observe about the interaction between Mr. Hernandez and the other man or men?
It just, for one reason or another, it caught my attention. Was either wasn't part of the baseline or the fact that it was Mr. Hernandez, whatever the case may be. It caught my attention, and I basically wanted to observe it. They either their stances were, not necessarily aggressive, but with the individual over his shoulder, talking to two individuals I've never seen before. It was something I just wanted to observe a little bit longer. Yeah.
And who was doing the interacting? Was it Mr. Hernandez or the man over his shoulder?
Mr. Hernandez was doing the talking.
And the man over his shoulder was just doing what?
Just observing.
And Mr. Hernandez was talking to whom?
One of the two gentlemen. Yeah.
One of the two gentlemen?
Absolutely. In that area.
And something about that interaction caught your attention?
Caught my attention, yeah.
Did you watch it for a while?
So anytime anything catches my attention, I watch to see, why it caught my attention, and see if I can, observe something or something happens. I watched for a little while, who knows how long, and nothing came of it, so I just continued on.
And did the two groups seem to split up or stay together, or if you know?
From if I remember correctly, I think they split up. Yeah.
And is at that point that you made a determination that, again, in your line of business, that everything was fine, you didn't need to do anything further?
Absolutely, yeah.
But prior to that, it was something that caught your attention?
Yes.
And you indicated Mr. Hernandez was doing the talking or interacting. Was one of the men interacting with Mr. Hernandez from the other side?
Yes, one of the other individuals was talking, as in, there was definitely interaction going on between the two parties.
So we're just going to place on the screen before you what's been entered as exhibit number 38. The area where you saw Mr. Hernandez and the interaction with the two other men, and Mr. Hernandez had one man over his shoulder. Is that approximately here where I put the circle? Or actually, let me go back.
Absolutely.
You have a touch screen in front of you, Mr. Ojimba.
Okay.
Can you circle on that about where Mr. Hernandez was interacting with the two men?
Sure,
that moves.
screen will
Yeah.
hit it up towards.
Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. Thank you. They weren't in front of this column, but I'm going to circle this column here, this area here. It was, from where you put it, it was closer to the wall than it was the bar there. But just if the column is not there, that's the area there that they were at. They were in general areas. I saw them.
And where were you? Can you? I'm going to change the
Yep.
color for you.
Okay. Once again, I'm not circling the column here, but I would be slightly behind it on the other side of the bar there.
And you're looking in that direction.
Correct.
For the record, that I'm printing that diagram, but while we're waiting for that to print, I'm going to place another exhibit up on the screen, exhibit number 42. And is that generally the same view, sir,
I believe. Yep. Yes, it
of
is.
the bar? And just to be clear, it's this area here. You indicate behind the pillar where you saw the interaction,
Correct.
and you were over here, kind of behind that pillar.
Yep.
After you saw that interaction, Mr. Ojimba, did you notice whether or not Aaron Hernandez stayed in the club or left? If you noticed.
I did not.
You didn't notice him the rest of the night?
No, I did not.
And Mr. Ojimba, at some point prior to testifying here today, did you have an opportunity to look at some video and see yourself on the video?
I did.
And does that video essentially follow or track your movements, at least to some extent, primarily after closing time?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce as the next number to exhibit a video composite showing Mr. Ojimba. That composite is a composite of what's been entered as exhibit number 29 and exhibit 56.
Any objection?
Without objection.
Thank you, sir.
May I approach you, witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Ojimba, I'm just showing you what's just been printed off of the screen. The markings on this photograph, those are your markings that you just placed in front of the jury.
Absolutely.
Does that indicate, again, where Mr. Hernandez was interacting with the two individuals, and also showed to the left side, I'm sorry, the right side where you were standing?
Yes.
Your Honor, for the printed photograph of the markings of Mr. Ojimba as the next number exhibit.
Any
Without
objection?
objection.
Thank you, sir. That's Exhibit 179. And before we move to the next exhibit, Mr. Ojimba, just to be clear,
Yes, sir.
when you looked across the room and you saw the person you knew as Aaron Hernandez, how many other people in total were across the room with Mr. Hernandez?
At the time, one other. I only saw one other.
All right, I thought you saw him interacting
Okay,
with
excuse
two
me.
people.
I apologize. I think you were saying with
In
Hernandez.
total, how many people?
Okay. In total, 4,
Including Mr. Hernandez or in addition to Mr. Hernandez?
including Mr. Hernandez. In total, 4.
So you looked across the room and there were 4 people, one of whom you recognized to be Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, this
And
judge.
can you tell me whether he was facing towards you or was his back to you?
If I had to physically describe his body part face me, I was probably looking directly at his left shoulder. Yes.
So he's facing,
He's facing the individuals
so
he's
that you're
interacting with.
seeing his side.
Absolutely. Yes, Judge.
And there was 3 others, is that right?
Yes, Judge.
And you said he was interacting with 2?
Yes.
And as then to the 4th person, did you associate that 4th person with either Mr. Hernandez or the other 2?
I associated him just by how he had positioned himself to be with Mr. Hernandez.
Okay. Mr. Hagan, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Jim. Just to follow up on some of His Honor's questions. So the person who you associated to be with Mr. Hernandez, you indicated he was over his left shoulder?
Yes.
And he was not, though, interacting, at least speaking, in any way that you saw with the other 2?
Yes.
Sustained.
What did you notice that man doing?
Just to be observing, not interacting, not speaking, just over the shoulder, observing.
And just to clarify, the interaction you saw with Mr. Hernandez, you said he was interacting with 2 individuals, but did he interact with both, or was his interaction mainly with one? Which was it?
It looked to be one. It looked to be one. I just can't definitively say, he wasn't speaking to the other, or he was speaking to one of the other. I couldn't definitely say which one he was speaking. That the other one, the second individual, wasn't speaking. It looked to be one.
It looked to be one.
Absolutely.
And the other individual seemed to be with the person Mr. Hernandez was interacting with.
Yes.
Sir, I'm calling your attention again to, I'm going to place on the screen what's been entered as exhibit number 178. Stopping at 2 seconds into exhibit 178, or the time on the video surveillance as 2:12 and 56 seconds. Do you recognize the man shown here?
Yes, that's me.
Now, at some point, sir, when you got outside here, now it's about 2:13, do you know whether or not you saw either the individuals that Mr. Hernandez was interacting with or Mr. Hernandez later on that morning, if you know?
I saw the individuals head to Tremont Street.
You saw the individuals?
That he and Mr. Hernandez was interacting with head towards Tremont Street.
And that would be this direction here, where I'm moving the cursor that direction?
That would be to the left, yep.
Towards the parking garage?
Towards the parking garage.
And where I have the cursor now, is that you, sir?
Yes, it is.
And what was your plan the rest of that evening as far as how you were going to get home and what time you got off?
Club gets out about 2. We clear it out, clear the sidewalk, and about 2:30 we start to head home. The routine that we had developed was we usually, things happen 2:30 at night in the morning, so we usually just either walked or got driven home to our cars by other security guards. We would go together.
Where was your car parked that night, if you remember?
Towards, if you're familiar with it, the Boston Herald building, which is closer to, in the direction of the left.
This direction towards the Mass Pike, is that
Yes,
correct? On
the other side of there.
Now, at some point, did you arrange to get a ride from some of your colleagues who worked at Venue or Rumor?
Yes, I usually worked Venue or Rumor, so I started walking over there to talk to other security guards that I would usually be working with, just to chat it up. They offered me a ride, and I jumped in.
So at some point, you walked over to Venue and Cure, is that correct?
Yes.
Venue and Rumor.
Yep.
And before walking over to Venue and Rumor, I'm at 2:22 and 34 seconds. Is that you right here, sir?
Yes, it is.
And did you know the person talking to the police officer?
Yes, I do.
Who was that?
That looks to be Big Dave.
He's a one of the security personnel.
He is one of the security personnel.
And the officer who he's talking to, do you know him?
Not by name, but I'm familiar with him through the years of working the nightclub.
Would Officer Eric James sound familiar?
Yes, it does.
At this point, sir, other than what you've described to the jurors, and again, your indication was it turned out, at least in your mind, to be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Did anything else happen that night? Any altercations, fights,
Nope.
arguments?
It was a smooth night, typical your typical Sunday nights, real smooth.
What are Sunday nights? Are they some particular night?
Yeah, at Cure they do an industry night. Most of the people who work the nightclub scene throughout in Boston can't really go out the Friday and the Saturday night like your typical club goers. So they do an industry night, which if you're off and you work the nightclub scene, that's the night you usually will go. So the industry night tends to be a lot smoother than most nights.
Quieter and a little more well behaved.
More well behaved, yeah.
Now, sir, I'm forwarding the video to 225.
Mm-hmm.
Do you appear to start to be looking to walk across the street at this point?
Yeah, I'm in a second here. I'm going to turn my radio in, hand it over to Jamie, and start to walk across the street towards the W web.
And was that Jamie Furtado, the man who previously testified?
Yeah, I've worked at that point. I worked with Jamie for a number of years. So I would hand my security radio to Jamie. Jamie would take it downstairs. I would start heading over to room and venue.
And in fact, that we see here at 228, that's you walking across the street towards the W Hotel and Venue and Rumor.
Yes.
And when you met your friends at Venue and Rumor, did you get in a car and then head back towards Cure?
Yes. On the way to Venue and Rumor, my friends, to include Andrew Wallace, whose white Volvo that is, saw me walking over, stopped, offered me a ride. We all parked in the same general area, so we were just gonna all ride together and get to our cars.
And what we see here on the screen at 2:32:43, at least according to the Cure video we have going, are you in that car right now?
Yeah, I believe I'm in the passenger seat. Being one of the taller ones, I probably ended up in the passenger seat.
And the person that's getting picked up and getting in the back driver's side seat is whom, sir?
Jamie.
Now, without stating what he told you, when Jamie got in the car, did he tell you something that he may have heard?
Yeah, he thought
Not what he heard, just...
Okay, so I apologize.
Did he make some statement to you, though, about something?
Yes, he did.
Without saying what he said?
Without saying what he said, he told me.
Well,
yeah,
let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I'll move on to another question,
Ask
sir.
a question.
Okay.
So after the car went forward, where were you headed at that point?
We're heading to the Boston Herald building. There's no toll signs there, so it's a popular place the nightclub personnel to park.
So I'm calling your attention now to, as you drove down Tremont Street, are you aware that Tremont turns into Shawmut before it goes over the Mass Pike Bridge?
Before it goes over the Mass Pike Bridge, absolutely.
And then are you familiar with the intersection with Herald Street?
Yes, at the bridge there.
So I'm placing on the screen what's been entered as exhibit number 10. Do you recognize that intersection, sir?
Yes, I do.
Is that the intersection of Shawmut Avenue and Herald Street,
Yes.
where
Yes.
the bridge goes over the Massachusetts Turnpike?
Yes, it is.
And as you were driving the car, what, if anything, did you observe? Not while you were driving, but while you were the passenger in the car that was operating, what, if anything, did you observe?
As we were coming up to the car, as we were coming up to the bridge, we noticed that car. We actually thought it might have been an accident. We knew something was amiss. We
Did
just
you see
didn't-
glass?
Was that?
Could you see glass?
We saw glass on the ground. We saw the car doors open, and obviously, even as you're looking here, it's not positioned as if it's going to go down the road. So, as in, it's canked and everything.
Did you get closer with the car?
Yes, we thought it was an accident. So, myself and Andrew, having deployed to Afghanistan together, trained in first aid. So, we decided to stop. We literally go around the car, pull up to the left corner here. We decided to stop.
When you say left corner, is that where I've marked right here? That's the left corner?
Sorry, I don't see your mark. I apologize. Yeah, that's you. Okay, yep. Yes, right about there.
So you pulled around the car?
We pulled around the car to, in front to the left.
Were the police there yet?
No.
Were any other cars stopped that you saw?
Having trouble remembering.
If you remember.
Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering.
So you pulled over here. Did
Yeah.
you and Andrew, again, with your military experience, get out of the car at that point?
Yes. Both myself and Andrew decided to get out and check if we can render any first aid. I went up to the driver's side. Andrew went up to the passenger side. Upon arriving at the car, it was pretty obvious to me that this was not an accident, and whatever aid I thought I could render wasn't going to be helpful.
Why not?
Obviously, I'm not a coroner and I wasn't a medical professional, but there was bullet wounds to the head and to the chest, and there was no chest movement, which would have told me that they were breathing.
Was that for both the driver and the passenger?
I definitely discerned it for the driver. Andrew discerned it for the passenger. At that point, we decided it would probably be best if we didn't touch anything. That now that this wasn't an accident and was a murder scene, to best leave as is for the cops to do what they do.
And the two men that you saw that you determined to be dead inside the car, had you seen them earlier that night?
Yeah, there was two men in the car and one outside the car. As we were coming up, we tried to ask the one outside the car what happened, what's going on, but he was a little bit out of it, hysterical kind of deal.
Did he seem wounded at all?
We couldn't tell at the time. He had blood on him. We couldn't tell it was his blood, but we knew that for the most part he was fine. So we just kept moving to the car.
And the two men that you saw dead in the car, had you seen them earlier that night?
Yes, the two men from the nightclub. They were at Cure where I was at that night.
And what were they? Had you seen them interacting with somebody earlier that night?
They were the two men that I saw interacting with Aaron Hernandez earlier.
And did you wait for the police to come, or did you and your colleague? Well, strike that. Let me back up a little bit. Did you or Andrew call 911?
Andrew was on the phone calling 911. So Andrew called them. We waited for the police to show up on scene. Let them know what we found. Obviously, let them know we didn't see who shot him. We found, we pulled up, found him like this, and then we decided that at that point we done enough and decided to head home.
And you left. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe I have one more.
You may.
Thank you, Mr. Jimbo. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Ojimba, I want to ask you about your process of what you've described as a scan, okay?
Yes, sir.
So a scan is when you look to the left and look to the right around the room,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And this is when you're in your capacity of a security officer inside the club.
Yes, sir.
And you are looking for what you've described as a baseline, correct?
Yes, sir. Trying to create a baseline.
And when something or someone is outside of the baseline, then that catches your eye.
Well, once you create the baseline, anything amiss from that baseline will catch your attention. Yes, sir.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Now, the evening of July 15th to 16th, you were working security
Yes, sir.
in the Cure Lounge.
Yes, sir.
You did your scan,
Yes, sir.
created your baseline,
Yes, sir.
and the only thing that stuck out from the baseline was Aaron Hernandez, right?
At that moment, yes.
And that's because you said he was a patriot.
Recognizable face, yes.
Very recognizable face.
Yes.
You mentioned previously that you had heard about a contract that he signed, right?
Well, at that was, yes, yeah, I would say that, yeah.
So, it's also true that you had no reason to take note of other people around Mr. Hernandez as long as they weren't doing anything wrong, right?
Yes.
And so that night, you didn't see anybody doing anything wrong, did you?
What do you mean? Can you define? I apologize.
Did you see anybody doing anything wrong that night in Cure?
In total or at that moment?
At that moment?
I couldn't tell you at that moment.
Well, what you can tell me is that you told us that you saw Mr. Hernandez talking with a couple of guys.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they were just talking.
Yes.
They were not arguing.
I couldn't discern that at the moment.
They were not shoving.
Shoving? Physically?
Yeah.
Yes. No, they weren't shoving.
You saw no aggressive demeanor.
Until, like, if you, excuse me.
It's
At
a
the
simple
be-
question. You
No,
saw
no,
no
no, I know.
aggressive demeanor.
I know. At the beginning of me watching and at the end of me watching, obviously, it's like I said, when I'm just scanning, when I catch something, as in something someone piques my interest, whether it's instincts or maybe I saw something wrong, I always know I just want to stop and watch and figure it out, what I'm seeing, what caused my interest to peak. For all I know, it was the beginning of an argument. By the end of it, I decided no, it wasn't anything for me to keep watching. It wasn't important.
Now try my question.
Yes, sir.
You saw no aggressive demeanor, did you?
What I saw at that moment were two different parties face to face, with both parties having a second individual over their shoulder. For all I know, they're talking about a great game, or they're talking about you stepped on my shoes. I don't know what I saw when I saw it.
Well, you took a look at their posture, right?
Yes, sir.
You took a look at their stances.
Yes, sir.
And you concluded that there was no aggressive demeanor.
By the end of it. By the end of me watching, yes, whether it was 15 seconds later, 30 seconds later, by the end of it, I concluded, yes, this is not an argument, this is not a fight. I can continue moving to the rest of the room.
Nothing stuck out with that interaction.
By the end of it.
Well, at any point.
At the beginning, with them basically it's a nightclub. To have two gentlemen face to face with their two friends over their shoulder is not your typical behavior of nightclub goers. So that at the beginning it was enough to pique my interest.
So you would agree that, well, let me ask you a question. You gave testimony about this case before.
Yes, sir.
right?
At the grand jury?
Yes, at a grand jury.
Yes, sir.
And you sat on a witness table, and you raised your right hand.
Yes, sir.
You swore to tell the truth.
Yes, sir.
And you tried to tell the truth.
Absolutely.
And you testified before the grand jury on August 27th of 2013. That sounds right, doesn't it?
If that's what's listed, I apologize. It's just for me, it's just a random day. But if that's what's listed on the paperwork, that's when I testified to it.
Mr. Hagan was there.
Okay.
Yep. This guy.
August.
At the grand jury.
No, he was at the grand jury. Okay, yes.
And he was asking you questions.
He was not a cure that night.
I'm trying to keep.
I don't know, John. That's not the right.
Absolutely.
But he was at the grand jury.
Yes, sir.
He was asking you questions.
Yes, sir.
Right? And now your answers here today, August 27, 2013, you agree that's just a little over a year after the event?
Yes, I can agree with that.
Your answers today have just grown since a year after. Isn't that true?
No.
No, the objection is overruled. The witness, your answer was what?
I said no.
You are telling a different story today than you did just a year after the event, right?
I feel like your questions were a little bit more, you're asking me to explain more, so I explained more.
All right, well, let's see what Mr. Hagan asked you,
Yeah,
Metro,
go ahead, absolutely.
and we'll see. So, sir, this is your grand jury testimony.
Understood.
Take a look,
Yep.
and let me know if it's yours.
Okay.
Take your time. Now, do you agree this is your grand jury testimony?
Was it based off the first 2 pages that I read? Yes, it does look like my testimony.
All right, I'm going to ask you to turn to page 8.
8, perfect. Yes, good.
Now, page 8, direct your attention to line 7. And you're under oath, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Hagan asked you a question. Okay, and what? Describe what you saw exactly. And to that you answered, I had just taken my position.
Correct.
I'm doing my scan, getting, get the baseline of the club.
Absolutely.
Look, let me finish the question. So
Okay.
you were asked, I'm
Okay,
asking you,
go ahead.
were asked the following questions and gave the following answers. And then I'll
Okay.
turn the
All right.
question to
Good
you.
to go, good to go.
So, answer, I had just taken my position. I'm doing my scan, getting, get the baseline of the club. As I'm taking my scan, I noticed Hernandez, questioned by Mr. Hagan. Let me interrupt for a moment. Just for those who may not understand the nightclub scene, when you say a scan, what do you mean by your scans? Answer, I'm just going, right to left, kind of, just looking and trying to establish a baseline. Obviously, I just took my position. I'm trying to establish a baseline, who's with who, what's the normal demeanor, that type of stuff, see if anything stands out. Question? And as you're doing your scan, sometimes after 10:30 at night, answer, Question, what did you see? Answer, honest. Hernandez, he stands up. Obviously, you've got his size, he's a recognizable face, so I obviously recognize Hernandez. Took a second, and I'm looking, and I'm talking to another couple of other individuals. Now, he asked you those questions.
Yes, sir.
You gave those answers, correct?
Yes, sir.
He asked you the next question, and you gave the following answer. Where was he standing, if you remember? I'm on one end of the bar, that towards the other, in closer to the fire exit door. They're standing there. He's talking to 2 other individuals. Their demeanor wasn't anything to take note of. They weren't aggressive. They weren't arguing. So, obviously, I recognized them. I took a second and saw he was talking to the individuals, took note, and just kind of contained my scan. That was your answer,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you were talking to Mr. Hagan in front of the grand jury, it's a year after the event, you agreed that their demeanor wasn't anything to take note of.
Correct.
Right? So we can agree to that.
No, well, I'm trying to tell, like, this grand jury today, this is all after the scan. Like, yes, their demeanor was nothing to take note of. So, like, yes, I'm trying to surmise why I stopped. And half the half the time I'm scanning, and then when I stop at things, half the time I don't know absolutely why. Something stood out, and I'm trying to like yes. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. By the end of it, yes. For all I know, I stopped because it was Aaron Hernandez. For all I know.
Well, let's
absolutely.
talk about by the end of it.
Yep.
Let's look at line number 10. These are your words. Obviously, I recognize them. I took a second.
Good.
Right? You realize how long a second is, right?
Good.
1 Mississippi. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. So you took a second, 1 Mississippi.
Good.
And you realized that there was no aggressive demeanor, right?
But yes, by the end of it, I realized there was no aggressive demeanor.
So by the end of that second, you realized that there was no aggressive demeanor.
Good.
Now, I want to ask you to look at page 30.
30.
Because you had another opportunity to tell the story that you're telling this jury today in response to a juror question. So do you have line 30?
Mr. Sullivan.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's let the witness get to page 30.
I just asked you to have page 30.
Yes, he's getting to it. Okay, continue.
So, a juror, line 10, asked, as far as you can recall, these are the only 2 people he talked to at the club. Answer, correct.
Correct.
Like I said, I was just doing a scan, and the only thing that stuck out from the baseline was Aaron. This, if the individuals, if there were more individuals to the right or to the left of him, I had no reason to take note of them. Yeah, they weren't doing nothing wrong at the time. Those are your words, right?
Yes, sir.
Court reporter took them down correctly, yes?
Yes, sir.
Your words are that you had no reason to take note of the people who were to the left or right of Mr. Hernandez. Those are your words.
Yes, sir.
Because those gentlemen weren't doing anything wrong. Yes?
Yes.
Your words were the only thing, right, that stuck out from the baseline was Mr. Hernandez.
Yes.
You didn't say one of the things, right?
No.
You
Yes.
said the only thing.
Yes.
You work for Miller Thomas, correct?
Yes, I know. Good man, Miller Thomas, yes.
And you are aware of the fact that Miller Thomas was a former detective with the Boston Police Department, right?
Well aware, yes.
Homicide division.
Yes.
Now, we'll try this again. So, when you saw this interaction, there was no arguing, correct?
Yes.
No shoving,
Yes.
no aggressive demeanor.
Yes.
You took note of their stances.
Yes.
You took note of their posture.
Correct.
Nothing stuck out.
By the end of it, yes.
You continued your
And
scan.
I continue my scan, yes.
Now, you've worked at a club for, how long were you at Pure?
I've worked at the nightclubs before since 2006.
And you would agree that nightclubs are social spaces. Right?
Absolutely.
People talk,
Yes.
people dance,
Correct.
people buy drinks,
Correct.
people communicate.
Correct.
You would agree, you've seen celebrities come in Pure before?
Yes.
You would agree that people say
Talk to
hi
me.
to celebrities?
Yes.
You would agree that people ask for pictures to be taken with celebrities?
Yes.
Right? So if I walked in, you would agree people want to take my picture, right?
You have an opinion on that?
Don't you think?
I have no clue, sir.
Now, so clubs aren't spaces where people stand alone in a corner, silent, right?
Not for everyone.
Now, your testimony today clearly is not that the two people who you saw speaking with Mr. Hernandez. You have those two people in mind? You testified about two people talking to Mr. Hernandez.
Yes.
Clearly, your testimony is not that those people, for the 2 hours or 3 hours they were there, your testimony clearly is not that Mr. Hernandez is the only individual those people spoke to.
Objection.
Yeah, I can't verify or deny that.
All right.
Yeah.
The objection is overruled. I take it you're asking the witness if he saw those people interacting with anyone else. Was that the question?
That's a fair question. We can go with that one.
Okay.
Did you see those people talking to anybody else that whole night?
I did not. If they did, I did not. Obviously, we're talking about 2012. I wouldn't remember it. But
One of the reasons you wouldn't remember is because they didn't stick out from your baseline, right?
no, they didn't stick up from the baseline.
And you said the only time people really interact with you is if they're doing something wrong, right?
The only time people would be talking to me is if they were doing something wrong. Correct.
All right. I want to talk to you about the time when you left the club.
Okay.
And the club closes around 2,
Absolutely.
but you don't leave right at 2
No.
because you work there, yeah?
Yes.
You have to clean up or do, what do you have to do at the end of the night?
And then the night from me, especially that night, I would be sent upstairs. I would be helping with crowd control, making sure people are on one arm bringing alcoholic beverages upstairs, making sure they're not starting fights. If someone was to stumble or walk out the club drunk, I would maybe help them out situate them with a cab. Go ahead.
So the point here is that you don't leave right at 2.
No.
You have to leave later in the evening. Yeah?
Yes.
And Mr. Hagan showed you some video of the time you were leaving, right?
Yes.
And you saw yourself about 2:25, at least according to the video clock, handing someone a communication device.
Walkie-talkie, yes.
A walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And that was around 2:25 or so.
Correct.
Now, you were leaving the club and you were heading across the street toward across Stewart.
Yeah.
Correct.
Towards the W Hotel. Yes.
Toward the W Hotel. You were heading there to meet your friends, correct?
Yes.
For an objection, I'm not sure what's being placed on the screen there, Steve.
Counsel, is this an exhibit?
No, Your Honor. It's
And it ought
going
not
to be
to
a
be
chalk.
published.
We should just turn it. But, and you were going to toward the W Hotel, right? You're going to meet some friends.
Yes. Yes.
And you saw yourself actually walking across the street, at least according to that clock, around 2:28, right?
Yes. I believe that's what it was stamped. 225, 228. Yes.
Around 2:28 you're leaving. I'm sorry, sir. Right?
Okay.
Now, I'm going to ask a question that the Commonwealth did not ask you.
Okay.
Sustained. Put the question, please.
Around 2:28 in the morning, as you were walking toward the W Hotel,
Okay.
you saw somebody standing in front of the W Hotel, right?
I saw someone stay. What do you mean?
Yeah. You saw Aaron walking over by the W Hotel.
Hold on. The objection is what?
Oh, Mr. Hernandez and so forth.
Overruled.
What is it? Yeah. I thought I saw before I left. I thought I saw them walk towards the W Hotel. Yeah.
And by them, you mean you saw Aaron
And then there's in his front. Yep.
and another.
Okay.
By them, you mean you saw Aaron and another individual walk toward the W Hotel, correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I thought. Yeah.
And a few minutes earlier, you told us on direct that you saw those two people whom you say Mr. Hernandez was talking to. You saw them not walking toward the W, but rather walking down Tremont toward the Tufts garage, right?
Up Tremont. Yeah. Correct.
And you know, from having worked there all these years, that it is probably about a quarter mile from the W down to the Tremont, down to the Tufts garage, right?
If you say it's a quarter mile, yeah.
What do you say? It's your words. It's not like this far, right?
I mean, I would call it
3 blocks.
I would call it half a block because it's the same block.
Right.
Half a block up. Yes.
Well, think about that. It's a little more than half a block, right?
No, it's one intersection at Cure there, and then the very next intersection is by the bridge. So that's the full block.
Okay, we'll figure that out.
Okay.
But you do remember seeing Aaron going toward the W, yes?
I remember saying that. Correct.
And the other guy
I'm
is
sorry.
going.
Hold on, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah.
Do you remember saying that, or you remember seeing that?
Trust. I mean, I'm trying my best to remember. So I remember saying that, but I just can't tell you today if I saw that. Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can.
Mr. Sullivan, how long will this? I'm not cutting you off in any way, but just schedule-wise, how much longer do you think you'll be with this witness?
Just a couple more minutes. You want me to continue?
A couple is fine. More than a couple, probably we should do it tomorrow. If you can wrap up in 5 minutes, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's best to do it tomorrow, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is as far as we will go today. We'll resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Between now and then, please put the case out of your mind. Don't discuss it. Don't read or see anything about it. Don't tend to learn anything about this case on your own. Enjoy the evening. We'll see you in the morning.